It's a simple straight piece of track, and it runs very, very smoothly. I've got a very slight slope here, and that's as smooth as it is. It's just got some elastic bands at the end. Right, we'll now take it into some curved track, so you can see it running on a 2-foot radius. Right, it's now set up on a little piece of track I've got here, which is the minimum radius Pico 45mm track. And again, I've got a bit of a slope on there, that's alright. There we go. So it goes around there without any problems at all. And because the bogies are full raced on their pivots, you'll have more or less zero friction going between the straight and the corners. I'll now try and demonstrate the rocking principle. At the moment, there is no rock. I'm pushing and pushing, and it's not rocking at all. However, if I was to lift the back end one up, you can see I'm able to rock it with the bogie staying in contact. So back onto the track again, and again we now have no rock at all. But what I can do is, if I now lift this end, you can see the bogie stays in contact with the track. So that's the principle, and that's what keeps it nice and steady at all times. This video shows a list of all the parts that you will receive as a kit if you purchase the low loader 45mm version. And then by following the instructions on YouTube, there are approximately 220 parts. Now, this is to construct the low loader. The basic chassis of the low loader is the same on the 45mm and the 32mm. So we're going to start off by constructing the chassis. So if you tend to get the parts as shown, as you can see, and lay them out, then it's fairly easy just to clip it together and then we'll glue it. So we start with the base. We add 2 ends. Some of it's a tight fit, but it will all go. Then we rotate up, pick up the first small piece, lock him into position. I'll move it around a little bit. That's the first one in. Then we turn over to the other side, pick up a long piece, because we had a short on that side, we put a long on this side. Again, clip him down in. While we're here, we can add another small piece on this side, which we do. Lay him down. Now we're going to go to the other end. We add in another upright, and we add the end, and we tip him over. Probably going to be best this time to do it that way. And we take an end. Now we put a long one in, if you can remember, so now we put a short one in. Now we can add a long one so that it overlaps. Then gently roll over up onto the other side. Now we had a short one there, so now we want to add a long one. We use a long one here so it overlaps where the join is. And we're left with a short one. And we lay down. So that's built the basic frame. So the next thing we do is just turn it over onto its back. And this is where we start to do the gluing exercise. Before we start gluing though, we need to add the end pieces, and we should need some elastic bands to hold them in position. So add the first end piece, just clips into the end. And you need to put an elastic band around to hold that in position. Then we need to do the same on the other end. And put the piece back in that dropped out. Right, and now we're in a position to start the gluing. We use a super glue, thin glue for this, and we're ready to start. Right, so I pour out some thin glue into my little holder. And we start at one end. We squeeze very, very tightly and just put some super glue down into each corner, and it'll wick in pretty quickly, and just hold it tight, and then run some up the edge. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing there. And again on the other side, and just hold it tight. Give it time to go off, and then move your fingers along. And we're going to do a little bit in there and some over on that side. Don't put any on these yet because we have another piece to put down on top. Again, hold it as firm as possible. We're going to glue the outer pieces on once the inner has been done. You may have to hold this for 2 to 3 minutes for it to go off fully. And we continue to work our way along. We try and put the glue where that notch is there. We try and put the glue on the inside at that point so it wicks through a little bit. So again, pulling tight, see where it is, and we add a bit of glue there. And do the same on the other side. Again, holding it nice and tight. It's also important when we're doing this that we work on a flat surface so that everything comes up square. We'll work along to our next notch. Again, pull in nice and tight. And to the next one. And so on, working our way along until we reach the end. I've now gone all the way to the far end, so we'll now do the small pieces on the end here now. So again, we've already done into the corners, squeeze tight, and again put the glue where the little lug sticks through. Do that on both sides. Move up to the end, making sure the end piece is pushed in firmly as well, and just into there, Don't do the end piece yet. Just carry on doing the sides. Hold that nice and firm. Again, while pushing down onto a flat base. The construction of the main body is quite robust, as I designed it to actually carry real heavy loads. You can quite easily carry a 3 kilogram load. And the bogies are ball raced in rotation and on the bearing surfaces where they come up underneath the body, so it's basically a zero friction as they turn. It's also been designed to go around a very tight curve. In my case, I've designed it for the 2-foot radius Pico set track 45mm. And due to the zero friction on the rotation of the bogie, it's very nice when it goes around the curves. Okay, now we can do the end piece. Try and get it so you can see it. So it's pushed in nice and firm and tight, and then squeeze on the ends, and then again in with the glue into the corners and into the lugs that stick through. Trying to get it in the right place as opposed to everywhere it shouldn't be. Just rub a bit off with your finger if you get it in the wrong place. Hold that nice and tight. For a good 5-10 seconds. And then we release, and we do exactly the same at the other end. Again, hold it, we're trying to go where the notches come through. Nice and firm, squeeze. Let the glue run into the joints. Keep it pressed nice and firm. Move up towards the end. Again, don't do the end piece yet. Just carry on getting the glue into the sides. Nice and firm. And then the end section, make sure it's pushed in firmly and tight to the top and the sides, and then squeeze to hold it in place. And then in with the glue again like we did at the other end into the corners. And then along where each lug is. Hold it nice and firm. And that's the initial gluing of the underframe on the inner pieces. We now still have to glue the outer pieces on as they're still loose, so that's the next job to do. But for the time being, just place it to one side on a nice flat surface for about 5 minutes for the glue to go off. Right, so we've let the glue dry. We're now going to glue in the other pieces which are loose on the side. So first thing to do is remove the elastic bands from each end. Again, we use the thin glue for this. And we start one end, so we get our glue ready. Again, thin super glue. Then we start at the end. You see it is loose, so we push down hard and then just add a little bit in the join, and add a wick down in. And then have a small piece of tissue just to wipe the excess off. And we move to the next joint and do exactly the same, again keeping pressure down, making sure it well and truly goes into the joint. Wipe off the excess and move down to the major block here. We'll probably do all these together. Again, use the tissue to wipe off the excess. And so on, working down. There's no point in me showing you doing all of them, so when we come back I'd have completed this side and we'll be just finishing off the other side. Right, I've just done the other side. Now I've come all the way along here. I'm just about to do the last couple at the end here. Right, that's all the side pieces done. Now we want to turn on end, and we now need to do the ones on the ends here, which I have to do out of sight. I may be able to do them. Let's see how we can do it. It's exactly the same as we were doing when we were going down the side. Again, wipe the excess off. And don't forget to do the end ones. And of course wiping off the excess glue. And then we do the other end, which I won't bother to show you. Right, so we've now glued all on the sides and we've done both ends. So the next thing we have to do is to add the reinforcing piece, which is this piece, into the base. So we do a trial fit first of all. In my case, it's very, very tight to go in, but on production versions that will be a much, much looser fit. Now to stick this in, we use some super glue again, but I tend to use the thick one for this. And we start off by putting it around where the lugs stick through. Do it on each lug. Do it down this end as well. in case we forget. And then just dob it down the edge and across and up, across, and then a few dobs down the middle. And take the reinforcing piece, load it on and push it down firmly and squeeze it really, really tight so it does go down into the glue. I say on production versions this will be a lot easier, it will be a much looser fit. Right, and using the thin super glue where the lugs come through again, smeared over so it soaks down into it. Do this at both ends, wipe off the excess. And let me do the same the other end. Again, wipe off the excess. Right, we now have quite a rigid, firm structure, which is square to the surface if you put it down, and should be square if you put it down to the surface in that direction as well. So that's our basic frame. Our next job to do is to fit the ball races that Bogies pivot on at each end. So the next two parts to fit are the ball races. Out of the 16 they're all identical, and as you can see they've got a flange on them. It's important which way we put them into the holes. They have to go in from this side, and they're a fairly tight fit. Position it over the hole and then push down with your thumb and it should go in with a pop. Do that the other end. And to make sure it's gone down fully, you should just feel a little bit proud the other side. That means it's gone down fully. Same with that one, just feel a little bit proud on that side. So then what we have to do is just to run a little bit of super glue around the bearing to hold it in position. We use the thin super glue. Don't need too much, so it wicks itself down all the way around. And just rub your finger over the top just to remove the excess off the bearing. And we do the same on the other one, just around the edge. So it soaks in, and again just clean it off the top. So give that a couple of minutes to dry. And in the meantime, if you'd like to go and find these two pieces, they've got a cutout and a plain hole that side, and we'll be fitting these as soon as the glue is dried on the bearings. Right, so that's our glue dried, so we're now going to fit these. We're going to fit these dry first of all, and the recess goes down so it goes down over the bearing. Line up the notches each end. It's important to do this with no glue first of all, and squeeze it down in. Now again, mine is quite tight. On the production models there'll be a looser fit, and squeeze down as tight as you can and see if you can feel a ridge. Now due to the various tolerances in the wood, sometimes there may be a ridge, other times there won't. In this case I've got a small ridge and it's roughly about the same size as a piece of paper. So what we then do is we lift off this piece and you cut some small pieces of paper, which I've already done here. Just a couple of pieces of normal writing paper. Just drop 2 at that end and drop a couple there and see what that then feels like. So we drop our piece back on, push him down and see if we've got a ridge. And in my case, no, that ridge is okay, that's missing now, so that's a nice good fit down there. And then we do the same the other side. Try the piece, see if you've got a ridge. I have. So lift the piece off, add a couple of pieces of packing, pieces of paper. Again, in my case, I've cut 2. Drop him back on again and feel that the ridge is there or not. And again, my ridge is now gone, so that's my packing sizes. So now we can glue it in position. Leave the paper in situ. And then I tend to go around with a thick glue. And like we did on the underside, just go around a few blobs around the outside, some around where the notches come up through, one down the end there. Keep it away from the bearing and then drop the piece down and squeeze him down nice and tight. There we go. And then we do the same for the other side. Again, make sure there's a bit of room around the edge to put the glue. Using the thick super glue again. Go down the edge. Again, around where the lugs are. Again, making sure you put the recess down onto the bearing. You could of course use a PVA glue if you wanted to, you don't have to use super glue. It's just things happen a lot quicker with super glue and you can move on to the next section. Again, squeeze down really tight. And that's that section done. So that's the basic shell done. Before we move on to the next stage. The next job we're going to do is to fit the bearing surface into each end there that the bogie sits on. And to do this you'll need the 2 1mm acrylic washers, 2 tiny wooden washers, which we'll come to in a moment. You need these 2 parts, which have a recess cut on the outside and the inside, but it's plain on that side with a 3mm hole. And you'll need the 2 brass bolts, which are 5BA, 1 inch long. And you'll need some sellotape. So the first thing we have to do is to insert the bolts in. So turn them over, drop a bolt in and drop a bolt in. And they're just flush with the top of the surface. We then take a piece of sellotape and one of our washers, stick it to the sellotape and then lay it over the top of the bolt. It'll be obvious why we're doing this in a minute. So that's the first one. And then we do the same on the other one. Again, we just lay it over the top of the bolt. So the washer is now proud. Then we turn the whole unit over and position it down so it's resting on the washers and the bolts. This is so that when we push down, the bolt is being pushed up hard against the bearing and is at 90 degrees to the surface, which is what we need when we come to fit these 2 units. So to do that, I'll just move the camera and zoom in so you can see what we're doing. Okay, so we've now gone to one end. The first thing we have to do is to take the covering off. So with a sharp knife, peel off a bit of plastic protection. It's on both sides. It's important you take this off. So we've now got our surface here, our acrylic, and one of the units that holds it in. So with that recess should fit into the hole quite nicely, and that then goes down over and holds it in place. So we'll do a dry fit first of all. So drop the ring on, position it roughly in the middle, and then drop the wooden bit down on top, move it around until it slots in and holds it firmly. Which is why we've got the washer underneath to hold the bolt upright so everything sits in at 90 degrees. So that's quite a nice fit. So we can now do that for real. So we take off the wooden bit, take off the plastic. Now I tend to use a thick super glue here. And what we're trying to do is we want to get it on the wood, on the ring, but obviously not on the thread or the bearing. So I tend to put around the outside with the thick, put a fair amount on, and then put your ring in so that it's roughly positioned in the middle. And we drop down on, making sure it's still on the washer underneath, and we push down firmly. And this will lock the wood to the other wood and will lock the ring in position. Give it about 10 seconds. And that's held firmly in place. Now we can lift it up, turn it round, and now we can do the other end. So again, we take our acrylic ring, take the covering off, take our wooden insert, make sure it's a nice fit inside. We'll do a dummy run, make sure it's a nice fit, which it is. Take the wood off, this time we'll leave the ring in position. And we'll put our super glue, thick one again, around the outside. Onto the bolt, drop down and push firmly down, making sure the ring's in the middle. And we hold that tight. Again for about 10 seconds or so. That's firmly in position. We can now turn over, remove our pieces of sellotape and our washer. Don't throw the washer away because that'll be needed later on. We do the same the other end. Again, keep the washer as it will be needed. Then we should be able to push the bolts out, which means we haven't super glued the bolts in, which is a good thing. So that's the bearing, and the bearing surface is done. The next bit we move on to is beginning to fit the wooden inserts. So we have the basic frame, you need the base insert, an end insert, another end insert, and the side inserts. These are the ones that have two bolts, one above each other, for one side and for the other. So those are the ones you need now. So we'll do a dry fit first of all. So the first thing is how well these fit in, nothing to be glued yet. So we try it into the end. It may be a tight fit, but it will go down in. If it's a bit too tight, then just with a knife, just sort of scrape a little bit off the side. And do the same on the other side. Well, the other choice you can use is, of course, you can use a file, but try and file with the engraved surface away from the surface, so any rough edges end up on the back. Do the same with that one, and try them again. And that's got a nice fit now. Now we'll do the same with the other end. Again, it's tightish, so we just run the file across it, taking hardly anything off at all. Again, trying for a fit, and that's a nice fit. Now when you fit it in, you'll notice that it's a good fit down onto there. We've got a gap underneath, that's because we've got to fit the base. But we also have an overhang there and an overhang there. That's on purpose and will be used at a later date when we come to fit the sides as a reference point to go up against. So we'll remove those. The first part we have to fit is the base. Again, we'll do a dry fit. So it should be a nice fit. Mine's a little bit tight, but it does go in. Try the other end. That's okay. And go for length. That's okay. So we're now ready to glue this piece in. For this I use a thick super glue. You can use PVA. So we just dollop it along around the edges and a few down the middle. So we can now drop this piece in. Doesn't matter which way around it goes. Pushing down firmly. Around the edge, make sure it's pushed down, and that's your base in. So we're now ready to add the end pieces. So again, we go down, we touch the base, and we can now see that we're level with the top. We're touching on the sides, and we're touching on the bottom. I'm going to do a dry run on this one as well at this end. Again, I'll hold it up to the camera so you can see. We've gone in, we're level on the top, touching on the bottom, and we're touching on the sides. And we have an overhang there and an overhang there, which is correct. Now again, you can use a PVA glue or a super glue. I use a super glue. So what we do is we spread the glue on that part there, offer it up, and push it back in. Which is what I will now do. So we're going to add some super glue around this piece and then dropping down in and go from there. So using again a thick super glue, you can use a PVA if you wanted to. And then spread it around a little bit. And offer it down in. Make sure it's pushed down firmly to the base and then firmly up against the back. Just level across the top, push in firm, and you should have little pieces sticking out each side. Then we go to the other end, do exactly the same, double check, thick super glue, spread it around a little bit, push down hard up against the back. Wipe any excess off the top. Again, make sure you've got the bit sticking out the side. Right, so that's the bottom and the ends done. Next thing is to fit in the sides. We'll do again a dummy run. They go in. There should be a nice fit in there, and they should be level with the top of the frame, as that one is. Then we can check the other one, the other side. Again, level with the top of the frame. Right, so the next job then is to glue those in. Again, I use super glue. This time I put it on the actual piece rather than on the frame. So we put some blobs down. Spread it around a little bit. And you can see that the bolts are closer to one side than the other. Try to put them so that the bolts go down. I'll rephrase that. Always get it wrong. The bolts go towards the bottom, which should then line up with the ones on the ends of the panel there. So I got that totally wrong. In we go. It's a bit mucky. Push them in all the way along. I'm pushing down firmly. And wipe any excess glue off the top. So we then turn around and we do the other side, remembering of course that the bolts, which are offset, go towards the bottom. So again, we'll do a check that it fits. Out with the thick glue. Spread it around. Make sure the bolts are to the bottom. And offer it in. Again, pushing down to the base so it's flush at the top. All the way along. And there we have the well bit done. Right, the next section we're going to fit are the plain sides, which cover up all these various joints. So pick one end and one end. We do a trial fit first of all. Should go on there and slide up against that raised edge which we made when we fitted that piece. And this one should be the same, again up against the edge piece there. And when they're both touching each end, there should be either a very small gap or no gap in there at all. If you find that you can move them backwards and forwards a bit because this is too tight, then just run a piece of sandpaper over there, but it should be okay, it should fit all right. Now the glue I'm going to use to glue those on is a PVA wood glue. It gives me a bit more time to move things around. And what we'll do is we'll do a dummy run with one first of all. So we spread some glue along onto this piece, then we offer that piece onto it so it butts up against there, and then we lay it down onto our flat surface and make sure that it's pushed into that ridge, down onto the face, that's flush across there, and then we should be flush all along there and a flush joint on there. And you'll be able to move it a little bit until you've got that. And then just squeeze it in tight. Wait a minute or two and that'll be fixed. So we'll do that one first of all. So we know we're going to go to about there. So that's where we'll start to put our glue. Don't want too much. And spread it around a bit with your finger. If you've got too much, wipe it off a little bit. You don't want an awful lot here. There we go. And we then offer our piece up, lay it down onto the flat surface, push it against the edge there and down onto the flat surface. Make sure we've got a nice flush line along there. Squeeze that in, squeeze the glue out. That's nice. And then move down to here. And again, we're looking for a nice flush surface across the top and at the end. Don't worry about underneath. Nobody sees that. But again, it will follow the line underneath. Again, come back, make sure we've got no glue sticking up. And then what I tend to do is just turn it over and then push down firmly. And see some glue oozing out the bottom there. So we've got a nice flush surface there and on the end and underneath and along there. So we can now do the other end, which is down here. We'll do a dummy run again. Fits in nicely up against the edge, no gap. Runs all the way along the edge. So again with the glue. Rub it in with your finger. Offer your piece up again. Onto the flat surface, push down and push it into the ridge. Again, make sure you've got a nice level surface there. Make sure you've got a nice level surface there. Squeeze it across so the glue's coming out. And should be flush on the end. Again, turn it over, push down onto the table, check for glue underneath, clean it off with your finger. There we have the side done. So we then have to repeat that now on the other side, which I will go ahead and do, and when you join me again I'll have done that side. Right, so now we're back and I've now done both sides. Flush underneath, flush at the ends and flush on top all the way across. All this will be covered up with strips. I'm ready to do that. Okay, so next section to do. Right, the next part to fit are the end covers, of which there's two. And they go on the ends, there, and there. So we do a dummy run first of all. They should fit flush all the way round, top, sides, and bottom. Now the way we fit these is to lay it onto a flat surface. A bit tight for space here. Let's see if we can move things around a little bit. Right, okay. So we put some super glue around there, or PVA. In this case I'm going to be using PVA. Hold it down on a flat surface. Finger and thumb either end. And then offer the piece up, making sure it's not that way but around the right way. And then slide it up until it touches. And then you can still, because it's PVA, be able to move backwards and forwards slightly until the ends are flush. Push down, which means base is flush. And that's how we do it. So that's what we'll now do. So we'll put some PVA glue over the end, or wood glue, or whatever you want to call it. I think I may have put too much on there, so just clean some of that off. Right, okay. Right, so down onto a flat surface, offer up the end piece, finger and thumb at the end, slowly bring it up and touch. Again, finger and thumb each end so it's level. A little squeeze while you're pushing down. And then a quick check that your flush top ends and it will be flush on the bottom. So we can then squeeze that in really nice and tight. Wiping the excess glue off, use your fingers. Again, squeeze on the top, remove the excess glue, and then I tend to put it down and push down, which obviously you can't see much because the rest of the bodywork's in the way. So that's that end done. Now we do exactly the same for the other end. Again, check that it fits. Upside down. Again, the plain side in, make sure it fits. Glue. Won't put as much on this time. Smear it around. And then down to your flat surface, finger and thumb either side, offer it up, check it's level at each end, little squeeze, and then check, flush, flush and flush, back down onto the board, and rub the excess glue away. Squeeze it down. Again, I tend to put it on the base and push. Right, so we've fitted the two ends. Now it's time to fit the tops on. You need two of these. The square hole is for access to the bearing and it's offset, so don't get this round the wrong way. If you put it on the wrong way round, as you can see, it covers up where the hole is for the bolt to go through, so it's important to get it that way round. And the same for this one, it's important to get that one round the right way. Now before we fit it, try and explain that this dimensions are the same as those dimensions because of all the pieces we've added. So when you sit it on top of there, you'll find that it's a nice flush finish all the way round. And that's what we've got to do when we fix it. So to do this, again, we use a PVA glue. It gives us time to move it around and take it off if we get it wrong. This has all got to be done by feel of the fingers. So dummy run first of all, that's what I'm doing here. So it does fit square all the way around. The other thing to do, because we don't want to get glue in that area, is when you've got it in the right position, you just draw with a pencil a square. So that piece goes there. So the first thing we do is to add some glue. And again, we use the PVA glue and we go around the edge and then around the edge of the square. And that's more than adequate to hold it on. And then just dab it in with your finger, spread it around a little bit. It's not a stress piece, it's just a cover, so it doesn't need to be too much on there. In fact, I've probably gone overboard with the glue again. Right, okay, let's get off. Okay, here we go then. So we lay them on, again making sure we got it around the right way, and square up the ends, sides. Just gently move it around, it will glide over on the PVA. And that looks like that's about in the right position. So in gentle pressure, I fix it down in position. Again, checking all the time that it hasn't moved. You can still move it a little bit if need be. It's flush down the sides, flush on the end, and flush on the well side. So again, squeeze it all the way around. Check for any glue coming through and clean off with your finger. And I tend to put it upside down and then push down firmly all the way around. Again, make sure it hasn't moved. So that's that end done. Then we go to the other end. We do exactly the same. Check that it fits on okay and it's square. Flush at each end. Flush around the sides. Mark your square off. Don't want the super glue. Again, go around with the PVA. I think I put a bit too much on last time, so I'll be a bit more sparingly this time. That's better. Maybe not enough this time. With MDF, it does soak in very, very quickly. Make sure we've got it around the right way. Lay them on, square it up all the way around. A little bit of pressure, can still move it. And make sure we're flush down the edge, all the way around. Still move it a little bit if you need to. I'll turn it upside down and push down. Excess glue, rub off with your finger. Make sure we're still flush, which we are. Put that to one side for a couple of minutes just to dry. Brush off any ink, any glue you've got on the surface. Right, so we've given that time to dry. Now the next pieces to fit are the end caps. There's two of them. The bolts run down the middle, so it doesn't matter which way around they go, there or there. We'll do a dry run to make sure they fit, and these are quite a tight fit in there. That's quite nice, that one's okay. And we'll check the one on the other side, and he's okay. Now for this one I use the super glue, so I run a super glue down the edge, and then using, there we are, the tool, we can rub it in a little bit, spread it around, then we offer up one end and then the other end, and it should be flush on both sides all the way along, which is what we're trying to do. So just rub our finger along it, that pushes it down nicely. There we go. That's a good flush finish both sides. Turn it round, do a check again on this one. It's going to go in there right. We add our super glue. Reminder that we're using the thick one. Spread it around a little bit. Up at one end, at the other end, and then just feel it down so it's again level on both sides. Rub your fingers up the sides, make sure there's no glue sticking through. There we go. So the next bit we now have to do is the sides, but we can check that those pieces fit in. It's up to you how you fit them, but they'll drop into the holes and they will cover up the bolts when the bolts are fitted. Now you can use, because they drop out, a bit of double-sided tape in there, and that'll just hold them in place, but not yet, because we've got to put the bolts in and make the bogies, but that just gives you an idea of what's going to come later on. Now we come to a tricky-ish sort of bit, which is we're going to be fitting, let me just zoom out a moment, that's the wrong way, right, okay. What we're going to be doing is fitting these two pieces, which are quite fragile, but treat them with care and they'll stay together in one piece. Once they're actually fitted to the model, we don't have any problems at all. One important point to note when you're going to fit these is that it's very easy to fit the wrong one. Now if you look carefully, you'll see they've got actually engravings in them, where on the other side is completely blank. So it is possible to take the wrong one and fit it so you don't see the engraving. Don't make that mistake. Pick the one that's got the engraving and matches up with the side of the wagon. So again, just follow through carefully what I'm doing and you should have no problems at all. So for this I'll just zoom in a little bit. For this you'll need a thin super glue, and you'll need something to put it on with again as usual. Now what we've got to do is, this is a perfect fit in all ways. So the first thing to do is thumb on there and line it up with that edge. Line it up with that edge. Check it's lined on the end. and we're flush along there. So we tend to start from the corner, so again making sure it's flush with the top and flush with that edge there. Again, double check, and then we put just a little bit of super glue into that corner and just pull it down and pull it along a little bit. That's the glue, not the part. And just a little bit of pressure on there, that'll hold that in place. And this is how we have to work our way slowly around with each joint. So that's that one in. So then we move down to the lower half. Again, make sure that that surface and this surface are flush. If you can feel with your finger. Bit of super glue into the corner. Pull it around a bit. We don't want a blob in there because later on we actually put some pieces in there which simulate some bits of girdering. Again, hold it, don't rush this job. And move on to the next one. Again, as you can see, we can move it around a little bit. So again, bring it to its flush on top. That surface is more important than the one underneath. Yep, that feels good. Again, small amount of super glue into the edges, keeping a little bit of pressure on it. A capillary action will drag it underneath. And then move on to the last one. Again, check that it's flush. Again, as you see, you can move it up and down a little bit. So again, we're going flush on the top. Again, in with the glue. Spread it around a little bit again. No blobs. Bit of pressure. And we can go back to, of course you haven't seen that on the video, but never mind. Right, okay, because I was in the wrong place. I'll show you that again in a minute. Right, back up to the top here, which is on the video. Right, so again, flush at the top, a little bit of super glue, move it around a little bit. Again, no blobs, not too much. Bit of pressure. While we're holding that, we can go to the next one. As you can see, you can move it around a little bit. So again, push it up until it's level at the top, which is the important part. Bit of glue in there again. Bit of pressure on top, hold it in position. And move on to the next one. Make sure it's flush with the top. Bit of pressure. A little bit of glue. Put rather a lot on that time. Move it around. And then to the end. Just a small amount. And then we work down. Now we've done all those, we can't move it, so wherever in we're stuck. So again, just a little bit in the bottom. It just holds it in position. Again, this is a non-structural part. I have to push that one down a little bit. I'm using hardly any glue at all. I think you can see that one. Again, push down. And finally the last corner. And push down. Right, that's that piece. Now we have to repeat that now with this one at the other end. So again, we position it, and we'd start off with the corner again as we did before, and we work our way along. We work our way along, down, round, and back to the beginning again. And we do that for this piece, and then we turn it over and we do exactly the same on the other side. So when you come back to me, I'd have done this side and I'd have done the other two sides. Right, you've come back to me now where I finished the sides. So we've now got the framework, girder framework on that side, and we've got the girder framework done on that side. It's a laborious job, but it's well worth doing right, because it gives it that effect at the end of the day, which is what we're looking for. So the next part now is to actually put in the girder pieces. So we'll just get those together so we can see where they go. Right, we've now got the girder pieces. And we have this shape first of all, and that will fit into the end there. It will just drop in. We have the big piece, which will drop into there. The ones with the 4 bolts on go by the side of each girder along there. And the ones with have 2 bolts on go on the small ones. So I'll zoom in on one end down here first of all, so we can actually see what I'm going to do. Try the space here. There we go. Right, okay. So the first thing to do is a trial fit. So pick up the right one, and it should fit in, which it does. So then add a bit of super glue. Again, I use the thick one. Don't want too much. Just spread it around a little bit. And pick up the piece that's got to go in there. Slot it in and push it down. Make sure it's pushed down around all the edges. This is why we didn't want too much glue around the edge when we were actually fitting the framework. Then we can fit this one down the far end. Bit of glue, doesn't need much. Again, this isn't a structural point. Then we go. Pushing down all the way around. And we can move on to the small ones. I'll bring into view so you can see them. There they go. Now these go into each point there. Now the best way to do that again is to take some super glue and put it on the actual piece itself. And then offer it up with the knife into position, push down hard, give the knife a bit of wobble so you can release it, and then push it into place. And move on to the next one. Again, a bit of glue on the back. Into position. A little wobble with the knife so it comes out, and then again push it into position. So I'll do all of these so you can see what we're doing. I'm going to do the one on this side this time. And we move along, and we now do the 4 bolt ones. Bit of glue at top and bottom, offer it into position, push down, wobble the knife to take the knife out, and push it down to make sure it's in there. Move on to the next one. And we slowly work our way along. No rush. I'll leave you at that point as I'll work my way along, and when you come back, or when I come back to you, then I'll have finished both sides. Right, so I've done the other side and I've done this side, and I'm now just about to fit the last piece. Right, there we go. I'll now zoom back a bit. So that's completed the shell. So this part is standard regardless of whether you're building a 32 or a 45. The difference is in the bogie. Although the bogie construction is the same, except for the 32, the wheels are closer together. The little lugs you can see there and there are when the bogie is fitted, that's the end stops, so it doesn't wrap itself around itself. There we go, and obviously you can add now the pieces to fill in your gaps where the bolt would normally go. So a little hatch goes in at each end. Again, as I said before, you can put that on with some double-sided tape. So you can put that piece to one side now, and now we will turn to building each of the bogies. I'll build one bogie. There's no point in showing you how to build two because they are identical to each other. So that will be in the next part.